Hello everyone, welcome to another PHATcast. Today we've got a spicy one for you, very spicy indeed. We're going to be talking about Xenoblade 3, the Xenoblade series in general, mainly 3 though, as we've all just finished the game. SPO just finished it last week, I believe, so he's got it the freshest in his mind. But yeah, no, we're going to be talking about everything about Xenoblade 3 because I think we're all pretty passionate about the series. I know, especially me and Gavin are, and I think we've got some things to say about this game. I've already sort of shared my thoughts on my own in a spoiler thoughts video that I did a while back, but today we're going to have a really good discussion because I think we've got pretty differing opinions on the game, haven't we, boys?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess we'll just start with like some general like summaries of Xenoblade 3 specifically. Actually, before we do that, I do just want to say, just to give context of like how much Xenoblade we've played and how much we've experienced the series. I've experienced all the Xenoblade games. Gavin, I think you're the same, right?
I've played and finished all the games, including the
Yes. And SBO, I think you've played 1, 2, and 3, but you've missed out X and Torna, right?
Exactly that.
Yeah. Okay. Right. That's fine. I did say that. I did say as well. We're gonna give some light spoilers for X. Probably. I'm gonna be talking about Torna. Yeah. This is definitely a spoiler cast. So if you finish the game, continue listening. If not, I do urge you to go play it in all the games because they're fantastic. So. Yeah, let's start off with just some like general thoughts about the game. I think we'll start with you, SPO, because you finished the game most recently, so it's like freshest in your mind.
Mhm. Well, let's see. Xenoblade 3. What a beast. I mean, I finished last because I took the longest. Because, well, everybody's got different schedules and all. But I did take so long because of one very important part of the game, the length. It is
Yes.
a big, chunky game. Like, you can right away tell physically it's bigger than the other games, like was said in the directs, I believe. But just in general, it feels like there's quite a lot more to do. From side quests to exploration. The story might be
Definitely
on
bigger.
par with the other ones. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like in terms of the world, it feels like I mean the world's massive. I don't think it's as big as X's world, especially because like X's world is like full open world, like you can just go anywhere without a loading screen apart from like one building. But yeah, this game is like definitely in terms of its areas, it's definitely the biggest out of the Xenoblade games so far.
So you can just explore the mecha, can't you?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you basically cover a lot more ground in less time. So maybe that part, if you look at it in the sense that you just have to walk everywhere in 3, then it probably feels a bit bigger than X.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, it's. I think the first area is it the Faunus region, the greenery one.
No, it's the A-tier region.
Right.
That's the one. Yeah, I did like because I think it was no. You always have fast travel. I think I just needed to walk back to find a certain item or pick up or something or do a quest, and like I had to go from one end all the way to the other, and it did take me about like 6-7 minutes.
But that sounds a bit exaggerated.
Really?
But a bit, yeah. Like,
what from what? Because like, you got to remember that it's not just. It's like from the start of Colony 9 all the way down to when you went to the desert, isn't it? Like it's quite a long way.
It's an exaggeration on two fronts. Like, I think you're underselling it because I really feel like you should take longer to travel by foot. But also, I feel like there are enough landmarks. Maybe you just missed some of the crucial ones. I guess that is a point. Like in the main critical path of the story, you don't actually encounter many landmarks. And this is actually something funny. The game does tell you that if you use the feature that enables the navigation towards your next objective, it will just give you the shortest path. But it specifically says this is not ideally the best path. It could lead you in the middle of monsters or make you skip out on some stuff. So maybe if you just took exactly the wrong path, maybe you just missed out on a lot of landmarks.
That's true because like I think especially after the Colony 9 area, things open up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of different pathways. But that is one thing. And I think me more than most is probably going to be critical of this game in this podcast. But my first criticism, and I don't know if you guys share this, but with the map, it only shows you landmarks, doesn't it? It doesn't show you locations on the map.
Definitely something I can agree on because it wasn't like that in the past.
No, and like when it told you because it will tell you locations like where like on your quest tracker, it will say near here, or it'll say this location, and you're like, where's that location? It does not tell you on the map, and it's really odd. And it's like Gavin said, it's frustrating because the other two games were not like that.
Yeah, thankfully the markers do show up on the map most of the time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think it's weird though, because I think we talked about this before, but I think the quest tracking system was perfect in Definitive Edition. Yeah, I think they dropped the ball with it on this one.
Yeah, the main criticism. Weird. Yeah, sure. Go on,
what would you say, Gavin?
Yeah, it's a little weird because usually it actually does give you like proper tracking for the items you need, but other times it randomly doesn't. Like in Riku and Manana's Ascension quest, you have to hunt certain monsters in Erythia Sea, but they aren't marked on your map, so I had to find them by myself.
That's really the key word. It's just random.
Yeah, and even when you do find the proper monsters to slay, they have the exclamation mark over them, but only in the actual game itself, not on the map. What's going on with that?
That's
Why
strange.
Why is it so selective like that?
I remember in I think I said before as well. I think that something that I really, because I mean, Definitive Edition wasn't perfect with it because it could be quite selective as well. The quest tracker. I think if you specifically wanted to collect one collectible, like that wasn't really quest related, you couldn't track that. You just had to do the random pickup. But in this game, I remember something similar. It was kind of like you could track. It was almost like if you weren't close enough, sometimes it wouldn't show up on the map. And like Gavin said, like with certain enemies, the exclamation mark would pop over them when you're near them, but it wouldn't appear on the map. And it was just, I don't know, it didn't seem to be as robust as it was in Definitive Edition.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I used to do in Definitive Edition, which is if I knew an item would be necessary for a later quest, but the game is currently in a quest that highlights that item, I would just collect all of them except one of the required items, and then carefully memorize on the map where all the highlighted items are, get the last one, and then start hunting for the other spots that used to be marked before I forget about them. So that way I'd have a couple of surplus for the next quests.
That's actually in character as well, because like you see in the future, it's like, well, I need to get this now.
Yeah.
I think my biggest criticism of it is the fact that you can't track, because Collectopedia ones were like, it was kind of like an achievement thing in the first game, like you got items for it and stuff, so it wasn't a huge deal. But in this game, like Collectopedia cards are actually quite substantial to completing your affinity chart with a lot of different places. And because you can't track certain materials, it takes a lot longer than it should do, I think.
I guess the Collectopedia in general in 3 is a bit wonky. It feels fine, and I do like how snappy it is, just share items with people. But at the same time, it's just so hidden in one of the menus. And the most you get is in the main game, in the HUD, you see a little icon that kind of looks like the Collectopedia cards, and that's a really subtle hint that, hey, you have enough materials for one of the Collectopedia cards. Because other than that, it's just not on my mind at all.
It's weird, because I think... sorry, Gavin, carry on.
Yeah, I keep forgetting the Collectopedia cards are even a thing because of just how, often to say they are.
Yeah.
Like, they even went through all the trouble to actually explain why Collectopedia cards exist. And I still forget about them.
It's weird because, like, with 1 and 2, not 1 and 2, 1 and X, I think it was, they had the Collectopedia system, like, pretty much down from the get-go. You have a library of stuff you need to collect, you find one, you register it, you find enough, you get a reward. And that was pretty much, I thought it was brilliantly done from the get-go. And then I can't even remember how they did it in 2. Was it even in 2, the Collectopedia?
It wasn't.
No.
You had the collection points, which actually give you multiple items at once.
I am glad. That's something I'm glad they went back to in 3. I think that they, I think after going through Definitive Edition, maybe they realised that the random orbs were a better thing to pick up. But in this game, it's improved because they're actually changed into little icons.
Yeah, and it's actually easier to tell how rare an item is.
Yeah, I think that's something that's good at the the Phronesis.
The Phronis Hulks.
Yeah, you got those little fabricator things. So like, as long as you pay enough money into that, you shouldn't have too much trouble getting any of the items. It's just knowing where the items are.
I guess I just always picked up the items as they showed up. Did they actually show you before you pick them up the rarity they will have?
It shows you as you pick them up. It's the
okay, as you pick them up.
Item text.
Okay, that's
and
fine,
also because you're your party will sometimes comment when you get a legendary item.
Yeah.
Does
I
it
guess.
look like a
Whoa,
little
got a
beam of
red
light?
tutor right here. We're
Oh,
going to be putting a lot of quotes out, aren't
Yeah.
we?
that is
Absolutely.
something, right? Because like straight at the start of the game, when you know when you've only got Lands, Noah, and Uni, and I was like, is this the only quote in the game? And it's Uni going, Lands wants something a bit meatier. I was like, oh my god! Like I know the quotes get repetitive and it's part of the charm, but this one's going a bit overboard.
I'm the girl with the gall.
That one too.
It's a bit extra. I think that might segue slightly into perhaps side quests, in the matter of collectibles, because you just get so many, and from the Foronus' hulks and all. I found myself actually reaching the cap of some collectibles. I just
Oh
never
wow!
given them use, and yeah,
See,
they were just
in
so
my
common.
case, because yeah, I'm not going to keep this a secret any longer. I did fill out that map in its entirety on
Which
my
one?
own.
Which one?
Erithia Sea.
You madman!
Manually.
Yeah, I did it. I did it over the course of the entire game. I didn't do it like in one fell swoop. No, I did it like as I was just playing through the game.
But you render all of it if you get all the landmarks.
Yeah, well, I don't care. My OCD was not happy leaving it the way it was, so I
You should
did
try
it
playing
anyway.
Power Wash Simulator.
Actually, that'd be fun to watch Gary play. To be fair,
Wouldn't it?
I think
I'll fall asleep one night.
I did something similar in Xenoblade 1 on the Wii, because this is before I knew that filling out the locations and landmarks got you all of the map, and I did the same thing in the original RFC. Like I swam around the whole map on the wall trying to map it out because I didn't know I didn't know the locations and that filled out the map when you found them all, and because I found one secret cave, I thought there might be more, so I just filled out the whole thing, and then I was like, oh, it looks so weird now that I've filled out the outer rim, but not the middle. So then I had to fill out the middle as well.
I think I did the same. Oops.
Yeah. Oopsie.
Right.
I think, but Gavin took us to the next level because Arithia Sea is absolutely huge.
Yeah, it really
It
is.
takes you several hours to actually fill the whole thing manually.
Jesus.
I mean-
Well, I'm not complaining because you get, well, some of the best music in the game as
Yes.
you're doing it.
Let's talk about the music for a bit because this is something I know that I've said in my spoiler thoughts video that I think the music is weaker than the other games. And I do, but I don't think it's bad or anything. I think it's still a fantastic soundtrack. I remember saying to you, SPO, specifically, like this is when we had all first started the game, and I think I must have been about 15 hours in. You was about maybe a few hours in, and I just said, "Is the music? How do you feel about the music? Is it hitting you the same way as like the first game?" And what did you say, SPO?
I said it wasn't. It felt like it was more subdued or something.
Yeah,
Basically, that really is like you explained afterwards. It's because of the mood of this game. It's just
Yeah.
not quite the same as the other ones.
I think because I went back to listen to Alfato Valley, which is where you meet Guernica, and like the whole big story, first big story event happens. And like leading up to that, I thought this music is really good, but it just feels really early for like a song like this. Like it feels like really wondrous and maybe something like it feels like really emotional. But it's like I've just got in the game. Like I feel like maybe I should maybe know the characters a bit more, or maybe I need to be a bit more into it first to like really feel what the game's trying to pull me into. And then when I went back later on and I listened to the sound again, the song again, I was like, this is incredible. Some of my favorite songs on the soundtrack now, I think.
The song does play just before like a big important moment in the story.
Mm.
So it kind of makes sense how it would be, well, the way it is.
I think I know you have a different opinion on it, Gavin, because you really enjoyed the soundtrack, didn't you?
For the most part, yes. The game does have some lows, and even then, the lows are not like, bad. They're just kind of there. But when this game hits high, it hits unbelievably high. Like, I actually think when it has those highs, it's on par with the other two games. Maybe even better in some instances.
I have
Context.
I've said like specifically, and we'll talk about the story in a minute, but I've said specifically, I think the end of chapter 5, start of chapter 6 could be the best, like in terms of storytelling, probably the best climax in the entire series.
Yes.
It was that good, and I think the music was a massive part of that, and I definitely need to listen to it again.
Yeah,
For
in
sure.
general, I feel it's the battle themes that are probably the best in Xenoblade 3. They have so many battle themes in this game. Even the final super boss has its very own unique battle theme. That's how much effort they put into the battle themes. It's amazing.
Yeah.
SP, what? Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can carry on. Sorry.
I wasn't really
Oh, was you just
about.
agreeing? Okay, fair enough. Sorry,
Yes,
I thought
yes.
you was about to say something. I'm of two minds of the battle themes because I feel a lot of them. I feel quite a few of them sound quite a bit similar, and I think it's because they
Isn't
use
it?
like a lot of the same instruments. Like it's like we've said before, Gavin. It's quite choir heavy.
Yeah, it's all about the choir and the flute, which is definitely
Yeah,
the flute is definitely just a thematic of the whole game as a whole.
I,
So it actually
I,
makes sense they would use it predominantly in the soundtrack.
I remember specifically M's battle theme when you face her. I think because I think is it a variant of the Mobius battle theme?
But it has more flute in it.
Yeah, but the flute in her theme I thought was like a bit ear grating, to be honest. I really liked N's version, but M's version I was like, ooh, it's a bit high for me. That
I
I
guess
don't
that
know
almost
if you feel the
flown over my
same.
head. No, I think that all flew over my head. For the most part, what I latch onto the most in a song really is the melody. The
Mm,
parts that you can actually hum. That's
yeah,
why, for me, Xenoblade 1 and 2 have superior soundtracks. Well, superior is not a fair term. I just
but
prefer
I
them.
prefer them. Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
the thing. In terms of media, I think music is the most subjective thing you can ever have. Like
Yeah,
you can
I
have
think
objectively bad games and stuff like that because of how they're made, but music is like it can be really good to some people and really bad to others.
yeah, well, I can still, I still know what makes good music and what makes bad music. I mean, you want bad music? Just listen to Yoshi's New Island.
Yeah, that's bad quality. Like in terms of like composition, it can be preference.
Well, it can also be instrumentation as well. I mean, I know some people absolutely cannot stand how Mega Drive games sound, but me, I think for the most part, it's great. It's
Mm.
distinctive. It's
Exactly.
FM synthesis. You can't get any better with FM synthesis.
I just love synth in general, so I
Yeah,
love
well,
the sound of Mega
I
Drive
don't know.
games.
Well, Mega Drive games should be up your alley then. They have a
Yeah.
lot of FM. They have a lot of that stuff in them.
Well, whenever we've done that browser video game quiz, and you've just nailed the Mega Drive games as soon as they come up, I'm almost like, oh, I want to listen to more of that. What game's this from? It sounds ace.
I want to do that.
Have you not played with that with us yet?
I don't think so.
Oh my god! Oh yeah, I can't
Ages.
believe you've not joined us. It's a fun game. We'll have to play it sometime.
We haven't played any games like that in ages. We haven't played Gartic in ages. We haven't played
Yeah.
What the Dub in ages.
Yeah,
What
we haven't
happened to that?
actually.
What happened to that group? It's just sort of like
I
I don't
think
know
everyone's
Life,
been
what the word
everyone's been
is.
life
quite busy,
happened.
to be fair. Yeah.
Life and Xenoblade 3. Let's be fair.
Look, that's true. Yeah. But right, yeah. So I suppose in terms of like we talked about the music, little niggles with like the UI and stuff. I think. Oh yeah, but quickly, I just want to say that I think the menu music is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's a menu song in Xenoblade X. I think it's just called Squad Selection or something. It literally appears before you boot the game up, and you have to pick something, and you'll only ever hear like the first 5 seconds of it.
Yeah, isn't that when you're creating your player character, your avatar?
I think it's that as well, but it's all. But after you've created your player character, when you go back on the game, it'll say, "Oh, do you want to play?" Because you can like connect up to other squads, via the online, and the game's really bad multiplayer. You can have a choose to like just focus on yourself, or have other players like sort of in and around you, stuff like that. Anyway, but that menu where you choose that, you'll only ever hear like the first 5 seconds of it. But the actual song is incredible. It's like one of the many wasted songs in that game.
I can't remember if it was you or Didi Bound that said, but I did say like, "Oh, this chain attack music is really good," and one of you two was like, "Yeah, it plays too much." But
Yeah.
that wasn't actually quite true. Apparently, at the final battle, the game just doesn't do the chain attack music.
Well,
I wish it didn't do that though in many other boss fights. I wish it didn't do that in like pretty much every other boss fight.
I know what you mean, but I guess it just made it have more of an impact than its final boss.
Yeah, well, following what Espo was just saying, it is true that the chain attack music does not play during the final boss, with one exception. The very final form when Neo and Melia join the battle, it actually does play at that point.
I can't remember. I guess at that point, it's like a real chain attack. It's like, yeah, let's get him. But before then, it's just, oh, these two in the interlink duo managed to break free. Let's really go for it.
really got a little trigger happy with the chain attack music. I will say that, but that's really a nitpick.
Yeah, at
I
least it's
think
good.
because the battle system in general, especially in 2 and 3, not so much in 1, but in Xenoblade 2 and 3, the chain attack is very central to the battle. The battle mechanics, like you really you want to build up yourself for the chain attack, and then that's when you do the nuke damage. I don't really remember it being an issue in 2 with the music, but in this game, like because you have chain attacks so often, and because they can last a long time. Yeah, I do think in some boss fights it takes you out of it a bit because you're like it's like all emotional and intense, and all of a sudden it's like and you're like, oh, here we go.
Even.
Yeah,
it does remind me
well.
of Xenoblade 1. The same thing happens if you just manage to crush a vision. Suddenly the entire song changes.
Yeah. I think that's something they need to work on in general because even in Xenoblade X, like the battle themes in that game, I mean, the whole soundtrack in that game is a bit divisive. I personally absolutely love the shit out of it. But the battle themes in that game, I think, are great. And then the Overdrive theme comes on because that's like that game's version of a chain attack, really. But like when the Overdrive theme comes on, it plays over every other battle theme, so you'll only ever hear the Overdrive theme, and it's a bit like.
Yikes.
I do wonder if that's like a.
Yeah, I do wonder if that's like a trope in JRPGs. It feels like it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a lot of JRPGs do seem to be a bit more intelligent about, like for example, a Persona that I'm playing at the moment. When you play when there's like a big boss there, depending on what kind of boss it is, it'll have a different theme for it. But for example, when you get to the last part of a boss's health, I'm pretty sure the music changes in some way or what have you. But in certain bosses, it doesn't because it wants to keep the narrative aspect of it intact. So yeah, I don't know. I do think it's not terrible, but just even a patch where you could like have it, just for boss fights, like take it out would be appreciated, I think.
I did remember another instance of that kind of thing happening in a JRPG. Pokemon, some Pokemon games actually did something like that. Do you remember in Gen 5 when you were battling Gym Leader and you got them down to the last Pokemon, you get this new triumphant theme playing?
Yes,
to show that you were very close to winning. And then they did something similar in Sword and Shield when the Gym Leader was down to their last Pokemon. The whole stadium would just erupt with just cheers, and it actually added to that. I think that was actually that instance done right. That trope done right, I feel.
Yeah.
Because it actually makes sense for it to be playing at a time like that. Because it shows, you are on the verge of victory.
That's
so
it.
It can definitely be done right, is what I'm saying.
They just need to realise that music. I mean, they know this because they make such great music anyway. But I think they need to like almost value their music more and just be like, right, this needs to play now. Put this to the side, so this can be the focal point. Sorry, SB, I thought you were going to speak then. Was you not?
Silence.
No, I was like, he's coming. No, he's not. But I suppose I could take us on to the other side of the audio. What did you guys think about the voice acting this time round?
A+. It is the best in the series. It doesn't have those awkward pauses where just before characters say other characters' names in 1, and it also doesn't have the wonkiness of 2. Like it doesn't have Rex's screaming being repeated 3 times in the same cutscene, so it's got that going for it. It is absolute A+. It is amazing.
I'm so mad that you said that about Xenoblade 1 because I never noticed that.
Well, now you do, and now I've ruined that game for you.
Yeah,
you ruined it. Yeah, thanks, Gavin.
I'm in the middle of. I'm in the. I'm in sort of a middle spot. My fucking god. Whatever. In the sense that I noticed. Yeah, I noticed that in Xenoblade 3 actually. So you're not quite right, Gavin. I did notice some instances where the characters are like, "Oh, now it's a time to do this, Noah," and it's.
That's noticeable.
Is that in the cutscenes or is that in like general like battle
cutscenes?
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
It's probably to just match with like the timing of the cutscene. That's probably why they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no! Why have you told me this?
Well, you will notice these things. If
I'm gonna try and forget that.
That's just the caveat of being a gamer, especially for as long as we have been.
Oh, my immersion! It's never coming
back. In my case, yeah, I will notice this kind of stuff.
But Ben, it's not over. For you both see. I also noticed something else.
Oh no!
Everybody's voices are just fine and dandy when they play, except Tyon. Every time Tyon starts to speak, you hear him inhale. Let's go here, boys.
Don't say that!
Every time.
he
The only
forgot
times he doesn't do that is if he just had a line like a couple
well,
of seconds before.
he
It's
just forgot.
incredible.
He just forgot his inhaler. That's all.
He should have
think-
turned away from the mic to breathe in. Like
The worst
Tay
bit
Sunday.
is, I'm really
The entire
susceptible
thing
to
in
that.
Chocolate Rain.
In like, like in pop songs and stuff, like you hear on the radio or whatever.
Oh no.
I'm really susceptible to that, and I'm like, oh yeah, bloody hell, they're running out of breath here. So I'm gonna hear that all the time now. I can't believe I didn't notice it already.
Aren't you glad I told you this after you finished the game?
It's no longer A+. It is now just an A. Yes.
I suppose that's like just part of the like dubbing process, because I'm sure that maybe sometimes like they didn't catch the delivery or what have you, so they had to just insert the name or one of the stock recordings into the sentence or what have you. But
The fact that inhale only happens with Tyon does kind of make it feel like it's just part of the character too. So I never was really bothered. I just
Yeah,
every once in a while
you
noticed.
could
I was
say
like,
that.
eh.
You could say
I do-
it's part of his character.
I
He
do
is-
remember
he is
there was
US
one
Rob.
part where it was some character, he sounded really quiet, and I did think he's not standing close enough to the mic there. But it was like halfway through the game, and it didn't happen for very long. So I reckon like they must have recorded that, and then there must have been like on a tight schedule or something. And the director was like, "Yeah, get closer to the mic. Hurry up, we've got to get this done." So I don't know, but overall, I agree with Gavin. I think the voice acting is incredible. I think everyone was brilliant.
What's even more impressive is the fact that most of these voice actors, this is like their first role in anything.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, there are some like well, I guess you could say veterans. Like Harry McIntyre has done stuff before. Harry Lloyd, who voices Zed, had a role in Game of Thrones, so he's actually well known for that role.
I noticed his voice straight away. It was like I know him from somewhere, but I can't remember where. And then obviously I had to search it up, and he's like, "It's Buddy Viserys." That's ace. But I think everyone was pretty much spot on. I liked how I actually, although I really like the fact that Xenoblade 1 has purely like British Isles voice actors. I think that having the dynamic of like in 2, you had like the Blades were American, but the humans were British. And it's sort of the same here. Like Senna is, she's a Blade in terms of species. So I think we can get into that wormhole in a minute. But she's American. So yeah, I like the mix of accents. It makes the world feel more diverse and more real.
Yeah, 2 actually went really far with that because it's not just humans and blades. It went as far as different regions. Like Moradane was like
Scottish.
Oh yeah,
Scottish, that's the one. A few Australians in Van Damme's Australian.
Yeah, I do think in 2 it was actually very justified since they were basically different nations.
true.
And having in the same world. Like
I really
the
like
Titans are
that.
essentially different countries. Yeah.
Yeah, it made them feel a lot different. And I mean, I know in Xenoblade X it was like all American, but like the ship was American, so it makes sense.
It's definitely an American localization.
Yeah, but it's American localization, but in the story, it's like it says United States on the ship. So someone come around and was like, bloody hell, Harry, where are we? It'll make no sense. So I completely see why. But yeah, Gavin's right. There's no like. I mean, I like Rex. I like Al Weaver. I think he did a good job as Rex, especially towards the end of the game. But he can't scream.
He can't scream.
No, he can't. That's what lets him down. And there's a point in this game. I don't think anything ever will top Adam Howden's "I'll kill you" as Shulk. That's just that's brilliant. But there is a point.
That, but also when he's in complete pain because of the Monado.
Yeah, that guy can scream.
Yes, so can N. And sure does scream when he gets cucked by himself.
This is what I mean. That I was going to say because who's the actor who plays Noah again?
Harry McIntyre.
Right. So he for them. I've heard quite a few people say they found Noah quite boring, quite vanilla. I never really saw him as that way. I just saw him as someone who, on the outside, seems like he's got his shit together. Like he's quite confident. He knows what he wants. I think at one point, I think is it Mio or Senna? One of them one of the Agnian lot says to Noah, do you just think you're perfect? And he's like, what?
I think that might be Mio, because I know they had a slight argument in chapter 4.
Yeah, I think that might be it.
I think it's Mio and Noah have the argument. Mio goes off, and then Senna says to him, "Do you think you're perfect, Noah?" And he's like, "What?"
Maybe it was Senna.
And like that's one of the things I like about Noah's character, though, and I think Harry McIntyre played him absolutely brilliantly, especially like once you get to like chapter 4 and 5, where things actually start happening that he doesn't expect, and he has to like take action. Especially at the end of chapter 5, you're like, "Oh my god, this guy is he's top notch."
Yeah.
That's interesting because I didn't quite feel that. But I guess we could talk that in the part about the characters. Unless we move to that.
Yeah, let's move to that. I think that's a good segue.
All right.
What would you think about the characters in general? SBO, kick us off.
Well, Noah right off the bat, I don't know, that might be a fault of something you and me discussed when I finished the game. But in general, the characters aren't as quite well developed as they could be. And I think that's what itches me the most about Noah, more than the other ones. Noah, because he just always feels like he's got that small mixture of, a bit of uncertainty, a bit of joviality and whatnot, but also just a bit of sternness and,
it comes across like he's got no flaws, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so he's not as interesting.
Exactly, he's just vanilla.
Mm.
It came off a bit like that. Of course, he does have his moments. Let's make no mistakes here. But for the most part, it just didn't feel quite like much. And then you have stuff like, all right, something emotional happens and he shows a more vulnerable side or something. And then the cutscene's over, and then we just go into like a rest spot, and now he's back to being old. We should rest here. Like, I'm not talking about the delivery, but like, he just never says anything interesting. That's always something about design that you're like almost forced to eke out the personality of your character at every single opportunity. And stuff like Lance and Senna and the lot do that. I mean, Lance has his volume on max all the time, but Noah's just a guy.
I think I see what you're saying there.
Kind of the point. I think he's meant to be more like the closest thing to like the player surrogate, if you know what I mean, because he is the least exaggerated of all the other characters. Like, he doesn't have like an over the top accent or anything like that. He's the most neutral, a lot like Shulk actually.
Kinda, but at the same time, I also feel like every time Shulk can be a bit more relaxed and a bit less of a blank slate, he really delivers. Whereas Noah's just, he's just doing that because the story demands. But Shulk every once in a while just decides to like, I think a good example is the post-battle banter. Like, Shulk is just being his normal self, sometimes he's really feeling it, whatever, but then the battle's over and he just goes into this absolute tirade of bullshit banter with everybody else. Like, he's just a jolly fellow. Like, when he gets to shine, he really shines. Whereas Noah doesn't quite do that.
Actually, I can kind of I think I do see a bit of a point. Like, Noah compared to Shulk, Noah's not as like flawed, is he? Like, Shulk definitely had his flaws. Like he admits to it that his whole motivation for his journey was revenge against the Mechon. But then later on, he actually reconsiders when he realizes that the face Mechon are powered by Homs, his own people. But Dunban is actually still, he's still, driven by revenge. Even after Shulk realizes maybe we shouldn't be so aggressive anymore. Like, there has to be a reason for everything that's happening. And Shulk actually stops Dunban in that one moment on Sword Valley, doesn't he?
That's
no one didn't have anything quite like that, did he?
No. I think that Noah, if you think about him in conjunction with N, he becomes a much more interesting character because N is the dark side of him, and you can see like, I think when they show that the montage of Noah and Mio becoming N and M after all these different times them dying, I think you can really see that dark side in him, even though he looks like he's got everything held together. It's like, I think once one thing goes out of place, he could collapse, and he loses his shit in the prison, which I think it can come off as kind of sudden. And I do see what you're saying, SBO, especially because like, I think the build up is fine, but afterwards it doesn't seem like he has like grown from that experience in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's just back to being Noah.
Yeah, I can see that. I do see what you're saying there.
with the whole N thing, I do suppose it does seem a bit like a foil. N is well, N is just regret and fear and egocentrical, whereas I suppose Noah is just he's just so. I mean, the opposite of egotistical. He's just kind to everyone, and I guess that's what also helps build the whole vanilla part about him. He's just so non-caustic because he wants to be nice with everybody. I
That
mean,
does bring
as
me
a
on to.
character, as a character that does give him a bit of flaws, he's not very interesting. But as a foil to N, I guess it does work.
How do you guys
He
feel
is a good.
about him, like forgiving N at the end?
A bit
Yeah,
out of nowhere.
a bit. Well, I don't think it's out of nowhere because, well, it's literally him. It is, well, his more dark side, the side that joined with
Yeah,
Morpheus.
that's true. I didn't really think
And
about it that
besides,
way.
N was motivated as well. He was actually a really tragic person. He tried multiple times to stop Mobius. He failed every time, and every time he was always doomed to lose the one woman he ever loved, over and over again. So when he actually met Zed, and he was shown all his past lives, well, that basically made him cross the despair event horizon and decided to go for the endless now, and to drag N along for the ride against her will, whether she liked it or not. Like, he didn't realize what he was doing. It wasn't until M and Noah swapped places during the eclipse that he
What a
that
moment!
finally realizes just how much he was hurting her by
That's
speaking
one of the
to him.
moments where Harry McIntyre really was like, really owned it when he turned around and he's like, wait, the Nats, and you're like, oh shit.
Sudden realization. Yeah,
Yeah,
that right there is what made him such a good screamer. He goes berserk when he
yeah.
realizes that M is dead
That is agony.
and is probably never coming back.
That's one of the reasons, because especially after like you learn what he did to the city, and like even his own descendants. I know it's his other half, so he's got this connection with him, but I just think there is no coming back for you, my friend.
Yeah, a
that
bit.
that what he's done, like, don't get like Egil, for example. I think he is redeemable because yeah, he killed, and sometimes you come across a bit sadistic about it, but he was killing for a reason. He did it. He was almost like, because he even says like, I've got no problem with your people. Like, this isn't a personal thing. I don't hate you. I hate Zanza, and you should blame him for like what's happening to you because he made it this way. And to defeat him, I have to sap him of his life energy, which is you. So you can sort of forgive him because he's not doing it for like no reason or because he's sadistic or what have you. Miles is a bit different because he was inspired by Amalthus, so he was just a complete twat. But like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was a redemption for N personally. And when he was forgiven at the end, I was like, I don't think I agree with that.
To be fair,
I
forgiveness
don't
is
know.
like a very difficult thing to to come to terms with. Like, anybody can have a hard time to forgive anybody for anything. So it's actually something that I find kind
Yeah,
of understandable.
maybe you're
Forgiveness is
stronger than
very
me.
difficult. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to forgive somebody or
Mm.
to forgive at all.
And I guess like N isn't entirely like selfish and sadistic and whatnot. I mean, consider the fact that these people live for 10 years, they know nothing except to fight, and then suddenly you get a taste of like peace and romance and whatnot. And what else are you gonna do other than wanting that a lot?
It
So it is understandable.
it all
I
comes
think,
so quick.
It's human
yeah,
nature, after all. Like Monica said, it's the way
I
it
think
should
that might be
be.
part of it. Yeah, I think that might be part of it. It's a bit caustic and extreme. It just comes, everything about N just comes so quick and so intense that I guess it's
Mm.
meant to just transmit the idea that yeah, this guy is just fueled by bad decisions, and as we all know, bad decisions can really blow up quickly. So
He
that's why they
does.
didn't try to make him subdued in his
Yeah,
like evil stuff.
he does suffer massive regret. Like, even Noah picks up that he suffers a lot from regret,
Yeah.
especially towards the end. But that's one of the reasons he chose to forgive him, because he finally realizes the error of his ways by the end of it all.
I think I wouldn't want him to be forgiven is also for like the fact that instead of battling N in Origin at the end and then having him as like the mid boss before Zed, I think it would have been a better idea to have N be the final boss and have Zed like manipulating him at the same time. Do you know what I mean? And then like you could defeat N and in turn also defeat Z. And I feel like that would have brought N and Noah's Ark like full circle.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Probably.
Especially because like the last bit of Origin is like, I mean, I don't know how, because I remember, I don't think this bothered you too much, Gavin, but I remember you saying like, I've just defeated X and Y and there's no cutscene, like they're just sort of hanging out on the floor. And I remember like I waited like for like 30 seconds after I defeated the first one, and I was like, is there supposed to be a cutscene play? Is it glitched? And I moved around, it didn't play, and I was like, have I glitched this? And then I carried on anyway, and it didn't happen with that boss either. And I was like, I'm gonna have to search this up. Searched it up, turns out there's no cutscene, they just sort of fall over. And I was like, oh, that's a bit weird.
It's a bit anticlimactic, but as I mentioned before, I do think that's actually intentional. It's not meant to like just drag out, because at this point you already know what you're doing. Your goal is right there. You're in Origin. You're going to meet Zed. You're going to take him out. You're going to restore the world. You haven't got time for any more shit at that point.
Yeah.
So what? So X and Y getting away. Just slay them. Move on.
Just feel like it's almost like if you beat Amalthus and Jin in the World Tree and no cutscene happened. They just fell over.
Well,
I guess
at that
Amalthus
point-
and Jin are a bit more important than just X and Y. X and Y are just more Mobius.
Yeah, and
Yeah, they were,
besides,
but
there's more to X and Y as well. For one thing, did you know the battle with X in Origin is actually optional?
oh really?
Yeah.
If you don't complete Uni's side story, X will not appear in Origin, so she's actually skippable.
Oh, that makes sense then, because if she's not important, you know, if she's optional, then it makes more sense that she don't have like a dedicated story cutscene.
Think about X and Y too. Even after you kill them, they're still relevant in a way, because Zed takes on their form during the final battle, which that could mean a bunch of things. Like it's never really explained who X and Y are, but they are definitely like
Yeah.
among the original Mobius, like Zed were. So they might be just like another like manifestation of Zed in a way.
I think maybe in that case then they shouldn't have put them in the final area at all. Like they should have had their demise come in the side stories or the side quests that they're in. Just so it gives you a bit of closure, because like you said then, the only 3 members of Mobius that are originally like they're not even human. They're a manifestation of, you know, people's worries and regrets and things from Origin. The only 3 that are like that are Z, X, and Y. So they are the most interesting, really, out of all of Mobius, and you don't really get any explanation or closure on any of them, apart from maybe Z, and even that is a bit.
Well, there are some little like hints at what X and Y's ultimate roles are. Like X, it's implied that X might be the one controlling the fake Agnes Queen, and Y is the one that made the flame clocks in the first place.
Yes, that's cool.
He's also the one that made that came up with the maturation process, so that Miyabi and Maramba and whatnot could actually be aged up shortly after being reborn, and that's also how you were able to age up Ethel as well, so she can actually join your party again after she's reawakened from a cradle. So X and Y actually do have quite a lot of importance to the story. It's just it's easy to miss if you're not paying attention, but they did do, they were very important to, well, the functions of Mobius. Like I said, X likely commanded the fake queens, and Y was the one that came up with the flame clocks.
Y especially is the more interesting one, I think, because the flame clocks are so, like, as a concept, are so central to Xenoblade 3. So, absolutely. I don't know, I would have just loved to learn more about. I wish he had more of a presence, I suppose. And one of the criticisms has been, like, because you have so many members of Mobius, you can't really develop one of them that much. Like, the one that gets the most development is probably Yoren, and that's only because he's connected to the party in some way.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few others. Like, you have D, who you find out was, well, a psychopath who collected people's heads. It didn't even matter if they were Agnian or Kavesti. He would just slaughter them and just have their heads as trophies. And you also had C, who ended up being Chris, who was Noah's former mentor. Like that gave.
We actually go through all the letters of the alphabet.
Yes, but there is no Mobius A, which opens up a bunch of guesses and theories as to who Mobius A is.
Salvis.
No.
No, it's probably not Alvis.
The most common theory I'm hearing is that Mobius A is Ionios itself.
Yes, that would make sense.
Because Ionios itself also represents eternity. It also represents Mobius.
Yeah.
Because it is formed from the two worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2, basically stuck mid-collision.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say that it's quite mid-collision, because if it was a real collision, we'd be seeing a lot of charred terrain. It's more like a fusion, an unnatural fusion. You can just grab and select parts from each world and slap them on the terrain of the other one. It's really alien.
What was going to happen was, when the two worlds collided, they would destroy each other. And that's why
Yes.
Origin was made, because Origin was there to rebuild, to basically reboot everything and everyone. But Zed stopped that from happening. Zed basically paused the whole thing. So now the world is just all messed up. And so that's how you have Ionios, was because of Zed basically stopping anything from happening besides the beginning of the merger.
It is weird though, because it's like time is still going forward, like very slowly, and that's why the annihilation events are happening. Like the worlds are colliding as the story's going on, but it's like really, really slow, and that's why these random annihilation events are happening.
I actually do want to point out something. I actually talked to Espio about this the other day, but the whole concept of the two worlds merging and destroying each other is actually realistic in a way. It actually has parallels to quantum physics in a way. I'm actually gonna pull this up. I got this from TV Tropes actually. Yeah, here it is.
Cool research.
So let me just read this out. So this is from TV Tropes. It says right here. The true nature of the twin worlds of Agnes and Kevis draws a great deal from from particle physics and quantum mechanics. The two worlds originally began as one, before they were separated, much in the same way that a particle and its antiparticle can be formed through pair production. A particle and its antiparticle will naturally be drawn towards one another thanks to their opposite charges, which will result in the two annihilating each other and being reduced to photons, which is exactly what would happen if Agnes and Kevis, Zed intervenes and causes the two worlds to freeze at the moment of their merge. But the fusion is unstable, resulting in entire parts of Ionios being eradicated in a surge of energy, aka the annihilation effect. So that's actually like the inspiration behind the whole thing.
That is cool. I did, yeah.
They actually did their research in that. I don't think that's like the actual like law reason why the two worlds came together in the first place. I already have my own fan theory on that, which should I share with the class?
Go ahead, yeah, why not?
I suppose so, yeah.
Okay, so I've already told you guys, like, in my own time, but basically, the reason the two worlds came together is because, well, they shouldn't be... Well, in Xenoblade 2, like, when Klaus was still alive and still a scientist, he turned on the conduit, and what did that do? It split the world in two. It created Allrest, and it created the world of the Bionis and Mechonis. Like, they were originally one world, but now it's split. Now, and that's basically goes like against, well, the divine rule, you know what I mean? It goes against whatever form of God in this world is, it goes against their design. So that's why they decided to bring the worlds back together again, because that's the way it was meant to be. Now, I know what you're going to be asking. If that's the case, why didn't they do it sooner? Because Xenoblade 1 and 2, those events take place over thousands and thousands of years, right? So why wasn't it done sooner? Well, the answer's simple. It's because of Klaus and Zanza. Those two worlds basically had their own god, so they could pretty much govern them and decide whatever happened to them. But now, at the end of Xenoblade 1 and 2, there's no more Klaus and Zanza. Those two worlds no longer have a god. Nothing to govern them. So, the retribution from up high, as Klaus calls it, intervened and decided to drag the two worlds back together again as they were supposed to be. Like, it actually, as Klaus said, he is not the highest power in the world. He is a god, but he's not the god. That's why he became a god in Xenoblade 2, because of the retribution from up high. So there is higher power in the world, and it's that higher power that brought the two worlds together, because that's the way it's meant to be. And thus, it kickstarted the whole Origin project.
do think there's some merit to that theory. I think in terms of like, because Klaus says this is my retribution on high, and I think what he means by that is he means he's having to atone for his sins alone at the top of the world as he oversees everything. I don't know, like I can see the God theory. I think because it's a sci-fi series, I could see it more because, and this is I agree with everything you said there. Apart from the reasoning behind it, I think the reasoning behind it is because the conduit disappeared, and that powered. I think that kept one's world stable because it essentially like created it. You know, it was like a brand new world, whereas the one that was left behind was like sort of ruined, as we saw in the land of Moratha. So I think the conduit being there managed to keep the two worlds separate, and then when the conduit disappeared, they started to like, it started to like tumbling on each other, and they wanted to started drifting back together. And obviously, as you've just said there, it can't happen, and then that's where the events of Xenoblade 3 come in. But that's sort of how I'd see it.
That's actually a good point. Actually, yeah, the conduit probably had more to do with the whole thing than we thought.
And that is why it annoys me that it did not make any sort of mention or appearance in this game. I've talked to you guys about it already, but there's a lot in Xenoblade 3 that they like between the events of 1 and 2, 2, 3, they just do not explain.
Because it's not relevant, is it? Like, what is there to explain about the conduit? The conduit has nothing to do with Xenoblade 3. It's not mentioned. It's not brought up. So what is there to explain about it?
Because it's relevant in 1, but you didn't know it at the time. It's relevant in 2, and now it disappeared. Where does it disappear to? Why did it disappear? What was this war that Klaus was fighting? Like and this is the thing, yeah. In the terms of the story that Xenoblade 3 told, it's not really that relevant. But why isn't it? Like why wasn't it part of this story to tie all 3 games together and create like a very conclusive storyline from 1 to 3? I don't understand why they didn't do that.
Well, it could be. Well, I already said there's a number of possible reasons. The first one being they wanted a self-contained story.
They definitely did, yeah.
This was because Xenoblade 3 was all about the aftermath of the first 2 games and what happened as a result of those games' endings. The other reason is, well, again, there was just no way to explain it because I don't think like the conduit had anything to do with Ionios. Absolutely not. And what about the war in Klaus's time? That if they wanted to explain that, they would have done that in Xenoblade 2 when it actually mattered, but they didn't because again, it probably doesn't matter.
I disagree there because, like, much like Xenoblade 1, the Klaus story in Xenoblade 1, it was just an explanation for why the world came to be, and in 2, it was an explanation for why the world is the way it is. Like, that is its own grander story, but the self-contained story in each of those games, it didn't really need clarification on what was happening. And Xenoblade 2 introduced a lot of stuff where it tied 1 to it because it also had Klaus. It had what's her name, Galea. And one thing that it did really well was it gave Alvis a more concrete thing of what he was. He was an Aegis. He was part of the Trinity processor. Those 2 games have nothing between them that isn't explained. Everything in those 2, that if you played 1 and 2, you'd be like, I'm all caught up. There's nothing there that I don't know. The only thing I don't know is about the future. So that's why I hope this game would answer those questions. But they decided to tell a story. And this is the thing, because Xenoblade 2 tells a really good self-contained story, but at some point it goes into the grander plot and weaves itself in really well. And I hoped it would do the same in 3. I hoped at one point the self-contained story would like the flame clocks just something that was introduced in this story would be connected to the grander plot, and it wasn't. And I completely understand what you're saying about the Klaus stuff not really being relevant to this story, but something that is relevant to this story is Melia and Nia, and we don't know anything that happened in their lives between 1 and 2 in this game.
Besides the photo.
Besides the photo and Giga Chad Rex.
Well, yeah, that definitely is a point, but where would you even fit it into like the narrative of 3? Like, where would you fit it without making it feel forced or out of place?
I'll tell you
if you wanted to explain like what Nia and Melia were doing when they still had their own worlds before, while Origin was being built, or like before they realized the merger was going to happen, where would you fit that into the main story of 3 without making it feel out of place or forced?
I think that you do it when the main story of 3 was wrapped up, and that was essentially at the end of chapter 5. I think after the climax of what happened with N and M, they should have still had what was going on in 3, but they should have also introduced what happened in the past to like make it come full circle. And it's a bit like I don't know if you know this, SPO, but Torna was originally supposed to be a playable like flashback, I suppose, in Xenoblade 2, but it was too big, so they decided to just take it to one side, DLC it up, expand on it a bit, and make it its own game.
I see.
I imagine they might do something similar with the DLC in 3, and that might be, you know, like when you finally find Nia, I think that was the time to like really explain her history. And she could have also explained Melia's history, because you find Melia super late. So I think she could have explained Melia's history as well, just so you have a full understanding of not only what their characters have been through, but like what the worlds have been through. Because the worlds are so important to this game, like the fact that they're a fusion of 1 and 2, they're so relevant to the story of this game, and they don't explain the history of them since we left them in 1 and 2. So I think that they could have explained all that, get everyone up to speed. Right, now we'll go into Origin to finish the game. And I think that would have been a great time to do it.
Just think they're going to leave it for the DLC because well, again, 3, the base game of 3 is its own self-contained story. It was like not really a good place to slot it in, probably, and 3 is already big as it is, so they just couldn't fit it in. So that's why I really do think the DLC is actually going to be like a prequel, either that or an epilogue of sorts, because that ending, the ending of 3 is also a bit ambiguous.
Right.
Yeah.
All
I mean,
I can gather from 3's ending is that the Origin was rebooted after Zed was killed off. The two worlds split up again, as was the intention, by the way. Origin was meant to split the worlds up again and basically restart everything like nothing ever happened. And that also basically caused everybody, like Noah, Mio, all of them, they were basically reborn in a way. They basically went back to the way they were at the very beginning of the game.
I don't mind the ending of the self-contained story being ambiguous, like, because 2 was a bit like that as well. You know, at the end, it was like, you know, who's he going to pick, Pyro or Mithra? He ended up shagging all 3 of them. But, like, even at the end, it was like, there's this new land. We don't know what this land is. Like, and it's the same with 1 as well. Stuart talks about the future on the beach and that. And that's one of the things, because when those games left us, it was in such a good way. It was like, there's hope for the future. They're going to go off, do their thing, and I hope they have great lives. We've got a glimpse of like what their future is now, but we don't know what happened to them, and that infuriates me so much.
There is an idea. So you probably remember that you hear Mio's flute playing at the end of
At the end of 3.
Yeah, I actually don't think that means Mio is there. That's actually like a memory of Noah's like resurfacing, because this game does establish that even though you lose your memories, like you lose your memories when Origin gets restarted, you lose your memories when you are killed and reborn, but at the same time, memories can like resurface themselves because it happened with Uni. When Uni first met Mobius D, what's the first thing that happens? She has a flashback of being killed by D in a previous lifespan. So memories are gone, but they can resurface. Like usually something causes them to resurface. Like in this case, well, I actually don't know what caused the flute to be heard by Noah, but he seems to be the only one that hears it. So it's definitely something that's going on with him and him alone.
Reminds me a bit of the ending of Inception. You know, when it's like spinning, and it's like, is it toppling or not? And you just got to sort of decide for yourself. It's like, are the worlds together or not? And you just got to sort of be like,
Yeah, that would make an interesting concept if they do make like a Xenoblade 4. Like, what did happen in the aftermath of Ionios? Did the two worlds actually decide to like bridge themselves together? Did they like unite in that way? Not unite like collide again, but you know what I mean. Because when they found out that their worlds were gonna collide and basically kill everyone, they formed contact with each other through light. So I'm wondering if they'll actually, build upon that and actually have the two worlds like coexist together, even though they're still far separate worlds.
You saying that just then made me think that we actually don't have like this is the only. It makes sense now a bit more to me. The fact that we don't have an explanation for everything, and you've got to think about it. That the closest thing we have to an overseer in 3 is Melia and Nia, and they're not going to know everything. Do you know what I mean? They're still, if you even think about it, like compared to Klaus, they don't know anything. You know, Klaus knew everything, and he's Alvis is the one who explains it in 1 what happened and what the world is. The architect, or Klaus, is who explains it in 2. We don't have a figure like that in 3, so there's not really a character to explain that. And I've just realised that, to be fair. So, I don't know if I could call that a negative. It's just something that makes sense.
It just leaves it open for, well, potential future games. Even though I feel this could cap things off just fine. If Monolith Soft wants to continue the Xenoblade series, then that would actually be a good starting point for like Xenoblade 4.
They said something similar to this game that they did with Future Connected in Definitive Edition, and they said that this game is going to be important for the future of Xenoblade. But they did say that this will wrap up the Klaus saga, and that I wasn't happy with, because I just feel like there's so many more things they could do with the Klaus side of it. But I do want to say I'll give this game massive props for actually doing what they did with the ending, and that is splitting the characters up. Yeah. Because I didn't think they'd do it.
Yeah, because the first 2 games they were mostly happy, weren't they?
I mean, in the second game, it's like they got cold feet at the end. I'm glad they did, to be fair, because like if they didn't, if Paramithra didn't come back, I would have been like, no.
Yeah, they came back. They came back, and well, they're now separate people now. But it's implied that they might have like lost their memories or something. Like it's not actually made clear what happened to them in the end. That's something that wasn't explained.
Well, the core crystal goes dead, doesn't it?
The core crystal. Well, she takes it off, doesn't she?
Rex has it in his hand, and then they come back, and then the core crystal fades, and it like goes black, and you're like,
yeah, that means they're normal people. They're not blades anymore.
Well, I said this to you, SPO, because in the Giga Chad Rex photo, you can't see the core crystals, so you're like, oh, maybe blades can't have kids. Maybe it's the fact that they're human now.
Yeah.
What about Nia? Well, Nia's a different kind of blade. She's a flesh
Yes.
eater.
Yes. Yeah, so she's like part human anyway.
It was already like explored in Xenoblade 2 that blades and drivers can get married. So what's stopping them from like conceiving, having children? I guess
you don't know the biology.
Exactly.
I guess not, but I would imagine Nia does have those bits.
Well, all I'm saying is, it's a bit weird if, like, Nia can have kids, but then, like, Dromac can't. It's like, they're both blades.
Well, Dromac's not a human.
That's what I mean. Like, but they're still, they're not a separate species, they're still blades.
Yeah.
So, would that mean that even if the blade was humanoid, would that still count as an interspecies relationship? Or not?
They don't explain.
They are technically different species.
Maybe that's one thing they needed to explain into. Who knows? Like, maybe what just 3 that didn't explain stuff.
Well, since she wasn't, she's not all blade. I would imagine she still has like some degree of like reproductive capability.
Yeah, possibly.
And besides, if it wasn't for that, we never would have Mio. Because let's be honest here,
hey.
Evidence is clear. The evidence.
Well,
is clear.
it's implied, but I don't know.
Well, have you seen them side by side? They look so alike. Mio has the same core crystal, the same hair color. She even has red eyes, and she's got moxie as well. And she uses the same weapons that Nia uses when she's in a driver forming too. They are totally related. Mio is that baby in the photo.
I think we got off track a bit with the talking about the ending, but I did want to go back to the characters very quickly and just say that
yes.
I loved Mio. I thought Mio was I don't know, she's just so sweet.
Mio's the best character in the game.
Yeah, she is. I just want to hug
She was built for it.
Yeah.
There's something you definitely want to do with every character. With Uni, you definitely want to take her to the pub one day and just
Uni's great too. Yeah, Uni's great in the fact that she's a high end tier who's just not posh at all. Like she's like just completely different, and I think that especially coming from the first game, we're used to how high end tier are. It makes it even better.
it's needless to say, Ionis is very different. It operates on its own rules, so yeah, characters could be whatever they want, regardless of like their origins.
I would say that I think that I loved. This is something that I think that the game. I think they did it a bit soon, but it was almost like I wish they did more of at the same time. And that I've said it before, but I think that the game needed more of a recurring villain. So of course you had N, but I assumed he would be someone that you come into contact with later, and you sort of meet N, do his thing, and then it's all over. And you're like, oh, okay. But the first villain you meet is Consul D, and then you meet Yorin a bit later. And I just think there's such a big gap from when you meet Consul D to when you meet Yorin. Like, there just isn't like a familiar face, like, so you can pinpoint that's the enemy. Do you know what I mean? Like in Xenoblade 1, it's Metal Face. He shows up all, not all the time, but like every other area or something. And then you have in Xenoblade 2, you have Jin, who's very prominent. As a recurring villain. I just don't think 3 had one in the same way.
Well, does it need to?
I would say yes, but you might disagree with me.
This game I mentioned this like off the podcast, but Xenoblade 3 does things a little differently. This game doesn't really have a central villain because, well, instead you have more like the mastermind, who is Zed, and his underlings, who are the rest of Mobius. And it's
definitely one that you need to think about to appreciate, I think, because of you have to think, the enemy of the game is the human's fear and regret.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the embodiment of the fear of the future.
And not just that, like the concept of limitation. Like it's established early on that the crew's mission is let's find out how to free ourselves from this cycle of 10 years. And whether it's Mobius that's behind that or some other face or whatever, they don't really care necessarily. They just want to fix that problem. So I suppose the villain can also be the problem. And I don't think there's a problem with that.
Zed wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for the people's fears when Origin was being conceived. In a way, humanity is its own greatest enemy.
Yeah. I think that they did this in a gameplay way, which was cool. And they did it in a few side missions too. But I wish in the main game they had the colonies interact a bit more, or like had them. But I mean, they do at the end, like they all come together and all that good stuff. But like for example, one of my favorite bits in Xenoblade 1 is the coming together of the people of Bionis when they go to take on the Mechonis, and Callian is above the Havras and he's looking over and he's like, the Nopon are over there, and the Homs are down there, and he's like, this is what we should have been all along, like the people coming together. And you've got Opharon who's giving him a bit of jip because he's like talks posh and he's a posh Ientia and that, and having those different dynamics play off each other was so cool to see. And I just don't think you saw enough of that in this game. You don't see people from different colonies interact with each other enough.
You do see it a bit in side quests, but it's more of the implied way.
Well, I will say some of the Ascension quests they sometimes have them interacting with other colonies. Like with Alexandria's Ascension quest actually has a go to Colony 30 to have to meet up with Valdi, and Zaon's Ascension quest has him and the Lieutenant Kite go to Colony Tau so they can learn to grow potatoes because they're having trouble growing their own food at Colony 9.
That's where Juniper and is it who's the he's like a bit of a twatty one from Colony 9. Is it Foots?
That would be from Colony Gamma, I believe. So not him.
There's one in Colony 9 who's like below. Is it Xeon? But I don't know what his name is. But he's like starstruck by Juniper.
Oh yeah, that's Kite. That's Kite. Yeah, the
Kite. That's it. Yeah. And like that was like a cool thing.
Did you actually see that cutscene?
Yeah.
It's such a Xenoblade 2 moment.
Yeah. It was. They could have put Cutting Crew. I just died in your arms tonight over it, and it would have fit perfectly. Like it was great. But like, I would love to see more of that. I know we saw it in side quests, but like in terms of like the main game, of like the main stuff happening, like uniting against Mobius, and I don't know. I think it would have been cool to see, and I also think that maybe because obviously one of the main gameplay loops of the game is going around and destroying flame clocks from different colonies. I think it would have been like, and they do this. That like not every colony is happy to lose their flame clock. Like some are really scared. Is it Ashera? her colony, that they just love to fight. So
Yeah.
Also, like some instances where there's actually a side quest in what's the place called, Fortophobos, where you actually discover that there's like this group of Kvesis that are actually like raided and taken over the castle because they want to restart the war, basically. So you have to go back into Kevin's castle. Yes, there are some people that still can't accept the fact that the war is basically ending, and they want to like resume it or even start a new one altogether.
I'll tell you what, to be fair, a lot of the things that I'm saying, it sounds like it's been in quests that I haven't done. Like this, for example, I was going to say, I wish that maybe like not everyone was so quick to get over the fact that, the flame clock's over now, I guess we're fighting against Mobius. Like, there's a lot of people out there who can't get over the status quo, and obviously that's one of the themes of this game. So I think I would have liked to have seen more like colonies or people from colonies just be like, no, we're still doing this. And to be fair, there is one where I think I can't remember what colony it is, but they go to attack the one that's the colony that's under the waterfall.
Yes.
Is it?
That's Lambda, I believe.
Yeah, Colony Lambda.
That's it, yeah. And they show up there, and it's a Kvesi lot, and it's like, you don't have flame clocks anymore. And I'm like, yeah, we're doing it to get food now. And it's like, no, like, you're supposed to work together now. And yeah, there was a quest that did that. So I suppose, yeah, no, to be honest, yeah, shut me up with there. That point is completely moot, because they do that. I think it's just because like they didn't do it like in the main story, but something that I have come to learn about this game is that a lot of the good stuff and a lot of the world building and the stuff that fills out the game is in the side quests. And I don't know if we said already, but I think all of us can agree that the side quests are the best in the series.
Yep.
Yes, yeah, they actually develop the world in a meaningful way. That's actually something I think you really shouldn't have done, Ben, because you told me that you just decided to just like speed run the rest of the game towards the end and not do side quests. I honestly think you were missing out on a lot, especially with the Ascension quests, because a lot of the Ascension quests in this game, they are good, especially Ashira's and Gondor's and Sagira's. There were a lot of great Ascension quests.
It's understandable why you did it.
What's that, SPO?
It is understandable why you did it. Like the story was at its climax, and you just wanted to really be inside of it instead of limiting yourself with like stupid side quests. But turns out they weren't stupid.
I think at the time as well that I've done this with every Xenoblade game. Like when I played the first one, I did a bit of the side quest, but then the main game just hooked me so much that I was like, I can't leave. I've got to do it. Xenoblade 2 was the same. It hooked me in, and I was like, no side quests for me. I'll do that on my second playthrough. And this game actually does, like, the pacing of the main story gives you a lot of time to do side quests. But I almost wanted to see the ending so I could be like, okay, now I'm caught up. Now I can go and enjoy the side stuff. And obviously, because I was a bit unsatisfied by the actual main story, I think it didn't. I left the game with a bit of like a sour note, but I don't think the game's bad at all. It's still one of my favourite games of the year. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be my game of the year, just because I am enjoying Persona 5 so much. But it's one of them where it's like, it disappointed me, but at the same time, it won't like Sticker Star disappointed me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I hated that game.
Yeah.
But like, it disappointed me, but a game that's still a bit worse for me than 1 and 2 is still like one of my favourite games of all time. So I've told you guys before, but I'm super excited to play through it again.
This time, do the bloody side quests.
Of course I will.
I mean, I have to admit, I'm a little sad that you said you were slightly disappointed, even just slightly, because it's Xenoblade. It's supposed to be like the series that we all, circle jerk over.
Yeah.
Because I understand your disappointments, but I wasn't that disappointed. Yeah, there were some things I wish were explained, like who the hell are the founders? That was never.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
But the main story itself, the self-contained story, the characters, they just left that much of an impact on me that by the end it didn't matter as much as I thought it would. I was still engrossed and I still cared so much. And well, this game got me to burst into tears twice, so it absolutely did something right for me.
It got me into tears at the end of chapter 5. At the end of the game, I'll be honest, like the fact that the grander plot was not addressed, it really overshadowed the self-contained story for me. So like when they were splitting up, I was like, oh shit. But then when the credits rolled, I was like, oh, That can't be it, surely. There's got to be more.
When the credits rolled, I just cheered. I literally gave the game a standing ovation.
Mm.
And then when Poppy appeared during the
Oh,
ending,
yeah.
it was another Banjo-Kazooie reveal moment. I'm not
Yeah.
kidding. And then the photo came up seconds later, and it just escalated it for me.
The worst bit is that, like, I'll give this game, like, a bit of shit, really, because I'm like, I feel like it did fan service in the worst way, because they got, like, the two worlds together and stuff, and it didn't really do anything with it in terms of, like, the past of what happened with those worlds, but I can't lie, like, I squealed so much at times in this game because of, like, references to 1 and 2.
Yep.
Especially, like, the Fallen Arm, Poppy, music motifs from, like, the first game. I mean, climbing the Fallen Arm, I was like, it's exactly the same like the first game. I love it.
Yeah.
I do want to add something else. I think one of the main points of this game is you if you played the first two games, you would think they would have a happy ending, but of course nothing lasts forever. And I think that's actually like a big motivator for wanting to like see these new characters succeed, because you know that the world shouldn't be this way. You know what happened. You know what happened to the two worlds by the end of the game. So you want to, make it better, because you don't want to see Shulk's and Rex's efforts go to waste. And I think that's actually like a big driving force into why, I was engrossed in this story and these characters so much. Way more than I was really expecting, honestly. And that's why by the end of it, the stuff connecting the other games didn't matter as much to me as I actually would have liked. So yeah,
It's a weird one.
it ticked all the boxes for me, is what
It's
I'm
really
saying.
weird.
It still delivered everything I would want from a Xenoblade game. A
I
big,
actually
massive
think
world with so much to see, amazing characters, amazing music, an engrossing story. It still gave me all of that. So at the end of the day, despite not really tying things together as much as I think they should have, it still left me satisfied. I'm glad for what I got, not what I didn't get. I do appreciate what I got far more than what I
I actually
didn't get.
think that I think I wouldn't mind the connections to 1 and 2 to 3 being lost so much. If and it's gonna sound weird for me to say, because I love the fact that it was in this game, and I love the characterization in this game. I love them so much. Melia and Nia, I think if they weren't in this game, you lose the personal connection to 1 and 2. So you don't like, if those two weren't there, I probably wouldn't have minded like what happened to the rest of the party, because you're just like, okay, that they all lived happily ever after, and this is the future now.
Nia
But
and Melia, you could say they're like the equivalent of war veterans. Like they've been
yeah,
there. Now,
but they're here, so because they're here, I'm like, well, what happens to the rest of the crew?
Yeah.
well, we don't know. It's left ambiguous, and it's left ambiguous by one simple detail that they didn't tell us about. How long did the merger happen after the events of the first two games?
Yes, I know.
It's there is speculated that it actually didn't happen that long after the first two games ended, like only a few years. Well,
Yeah,
considering that if Mio really is Nia's child, then that means the merger happened like at least a decade after the ending of the first two games. So it actually might not have been that
Just
long
2
after.
years afterwards. Remember, we have Giga Chad Rex.
Yeah,
He-
Rex is definitely
acknowledged 2
older
years.
now.
yeah, true.
Like,
Yeah, he didn't just grow those muscles and those shoulders in 2
well,
years.
what you got to remember is Rex in 2 is 15, so quite a bit of time must have passed by then. So it has
Sorry,
been a
Alan.
while, yeah. So it was probably like something like what, 15, 20 years, because the universe is massive, right? And even when you're traveling at light speed, it's still going to take you a long, long time to reach one end to the other. So that's pretty much why it took so long for the two worlds to come together, because they're just that far apart, really.
So this is something that I think this is what I really do wish the game explained, and it's just, how are Melia and Nia even alive? Like, they say this takes place over like 1,000 years, right? And like we've just been saying, at what point did the merger happen after the events of 1 and 2? It must have been like substantially enough, because Melia and Nia both look a fair amount older. But in terms of their lifespan, it makes no sense why they're still alive. Like, High Entia only live about 600 to 700 years, and that's quite an old High Entia. And in terms of a blade, or a flesh eater at that,
specifically flesh eater.
a flesh eater, yeah. If you look at Minoff in Xenoblade 2, he's an old man. He's pretty much at the end of his life. If you look at Minoff in Torna, he's a young guy. So if a flesh eater lives about 500 to 600 years, it makes no sense how they're still alive when this has been going on for 1,000 years.
No, it does make some sense because you gotta remember what were Nia and Melia doing the whole time Ionios was around? They were asleep. They were in stasis. There's a chance that they didn't age during the stasis period.
I suppose that's true.
As for where's the rest of the cast, well, they were probably recorded in Origin, weren't they? So they actually might come back once the world's separate again, once Origin rebooted.
Well, there's something I can't say because it's a spoiler for one of their two quests, but there's something that happens that could allude to the fact that they might not have passed away and they might still be out there. I won't elaborate on it because obviously SPO hasn't done it yet, but there's like an off sentence thing that you could take as, oh, are they still alive then? And it's just sort of like one of those. It's like I know they've left it ambiguous, and I know it probably was deliberate, but it's just such a tease. It's like, oh, I love those guys. Just tell me what happened.
Tease, but I don't think they're alive per se. They're just, well, they were recorded in Origin along with everybody else. The only reason they weren't reborn is because they were too old.
What I would argue against that though is the fact that the founders, like a lot of them, are implied to be like members of the original cast. So if they weren't in Origin and they weren't reborn, why are the founders based on some of them?
Considering that Nia and Melia somehow survived the merger unscathed, I don't think that won't mean others might have escaped somehow. It's very ambiguous, and that's definitely one thing I wish they at least hinted at, but nothing really comes of that.
That's part of the problem that I feel, and I think Ben feels as well. It's like, all right, a bit of ambiguity is fine, but at some points like this, it's just there's nothing to lead on.
The only thing we really get is Nia saying that she'll meet them again when she's looking at the photo, which implies that they will come back after Origin reboots the worlds, but in what capacity?
I told Gavin, but this wasn't quite my interpretation. My interpretation was more along the lines of, all right, she's been alive for many hundreds of years. The rest of the crew are long dead of old age, and well, now that her mission is complete, she's just ready to hit the bucket as well. Give it a few more years, and she'll meet them in the afterlife.
That's honestly how I took it.
What the hell's going to happen to Poppy then? Poppy would be all alone.
That was one thing I said in my spoiler thoughts video as well. I was like, the fuck? Poppy's here. She can fight. Why ain't she in the story? But
I think there's a reason for that.
Okay.
Could you imagine if Mobius got their hands on Poppy? Yeah, they'd be indestructible.
I suppose if they corrupted Poppy, it could be a possibility.
Also, she was hiding inside that. She was hiding inside that. That machine
fridge.
that was. Yeah, she was hiding inside that machine that Nia was using to basically keep tabs on the world. So Poppy might have actually had like some involvement in that whole system as well. Like she must have been like some kind of sentry or something, you could say.
When I said before about like little references to 1 and 2, like making me squeal, I squealed when she didn't say his name, but she mentions like Tora in like a passing thing. She's like, "Oh, there was a particular Nopham who helped develop Origin," and I was like, "Oh, that's Tora."
Yeah, that heavily implies that at least most of the main cast should have been alive by the time they decided to conceive Origin. Which also, I actually theorize that Shulk might have also been involved in the creation of Origin as well.
It's very true.
He's a mechanical engineer. There might have been others too, like some of the High Entia, some of the Machina, maybe some of the Inderline people might have had an involvement in it. Like the people that have really advanced knowledge and advanced technology also must have played a part in building Origin.
Do you think because I did like how they at some points they noted the differences between them both. Like I don't think they ever said like how come Agnians don't have wings or anything like that. But like they talk about Uni's wings. I think they talk about Senna's core crystal at some point.
I don't think so.
I think that I know they're only like copies of the people in Origin. So biologically they might all be the same. Like they just look different. I don't know. I feel like because that was something that was always really cool about the previous games. Was like different species have different things to them. Like obviously, High Entia live fucking really long. They have naturally higher ether proficiency. Nopon are sort of like. To be fair, they're very similar to humans in terms of lifespan, but they can use ether in different ways too. And even in like Xenoblade 2, you had Indolines who lived a long time. So I don't know. I feel like in 3 they didn't focus in on like their species specific thing enough. But I suppose if they did that, they'd have to sort of explain like, oh bloody hell, like here's everything from 1 and 2 that explains why they're like this way. Yeah.
And I guess they further wanted to highlight the difference between, combat humans and regular humans. The whole 10-year lifespan versus nature. So maybe adding on to that all the nuances about, some of these humans are actually high end here, so they technically live longer and blah, blah, blah. That just wouldn't work.
I do think in like the next game when because they will, I think they will decide to like unite the games again and like have characters come back and stuff. And I know this is such a like an unpopular thing, but I feel like they need to focus up on the fact that they've got all this great history now of all these games they've made. Even if it comes across as inaccessible to new players, they need to have a focused up game that includes all the details from the previous games and have it be like, you would have to have played those games to understand this new one. I know they'll never do that because Nintendo will be like, we need sales. You know what makes sales? Accessibility. And I think that's why, like, in this game, like, they still said, oh yeah, you can play it was my biggest fear, by the way, that when they come out and say, you can still play this game if you play the other two, you'll understand everything. I was like, oh no. But then I thought they did the same with 2, and 2 was like insane at the end if you'd played 1, but you didn't have to play 1 to understand it. So
it was a big spoiler for Xenoblade 1, though. Kind of a double whammy.
Yeah, I suppose it's like context sensitive, isn't it? It's like I don't know what went on there.
I actually do agree with what you said. I actually do agree with what you said about what they could do for the next Xenoblade game, but I do actually have one wish. Don't carry on doing this forever, otherwise we're going to just end up with another Kingdom Hearts where you pretty much need to play every single game, and that's actually another reason why I think they chose not to elaborate too much on other things in this game, is because, well, you just get another Kingdom Hearts, and I would imagine a lot of people wouldn't like that, even the diehard fans, because it would make things too convoluted, it would alienate newcomers, and if they carried it on this for too long, then it really is going to be a problem to keep tabs on everything. But that's actually my biggest
if they left so many things open, they're just opening the door for more games to have to explain stuff. Whereas if they closed a lot of questions in 3, that wouldn't be a problem because it would just end the trilogy.
Yeah. So I think that's my thing with it. Yeah, I agree with that, SPO. I do think that if the DLC is a prequel and it is about the founders and what happened between 1/2 and 3, I think that they can like really focus it up. And the fact that it's a DLC and not a brand new full game, I think they can afford to be a bit like lenient with the fact that you need to have played the other ones to like really understand the DLC. But I also think they've done it. If they do this, it's like a genius move on their part. But they can reel people in with the story of 3 and have like Nia and Melia be introduced to them, so they're already attached to those characters. So when the DLC comes around and those new players who haven't played the others can cling on to Nia and Melia and can that way experience the story through them, even if they don't understand all the history from 1 and 2. I think that's a clever way of doing it if that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, I am hopeful for the future. I'm worried in a way because it somewhat relies on this DLC for me to be fully satisfied with the main story. But yeah, like I've said, I know we haven't really talked much about the battle system and the gameplay and that. I mean, do we all agree it's probably the best like game in the series?
Game?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, in terms of like gameplay, battle mechanics.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, it takes it takes some of the stuff I liked about 1. It takes some aspects from 2, but it streamlines it. It makes it far less complicated, which was my biggest problem with Xenoblade 2, was the battle system. It was too complicated. It was poorly explained. You couldn't review tutorials, and that is what brought Xenoblade 2 down for me a bit. Not massively, but a bit. It certainly makes it harder to look back fondly upon, gameplay wise. Story wise, of course, but
yeah,
the battle
I know it really
was too complicated, and there was other things in 2 as well. That stupid rare blade gacha system. What a terrible idea that was.
I think those 2 things really ruined the game for you, SPO, didn't they?
Yeah. And from that point on, it just snowballed into other small things, just kept piling up into. Yeah, at some point I just wanted to trudge along and just get with the story already, which is already starting to annoy me. But then even though all the small things just kept piling up, and Xenoblade 2.
Also, only one save file. I know that sounds like a weird thing.
Yeah, that's so annoying. Oh.
No. Okay, so the single save file thing, that's probably a me problem, but let me explain why that's a pet peeve of mine, alright? Okay, so, back in the 90s, it made sense for games to have one save file because you only had limited, SRAM back then on the cartridges, but in this day and age, it's not really excusable.
No.
And there's another problem I have with it. Games with one save file, I find to be way harder to replay because it means I'm going to have to get rid of all my hard work on the first playthrough and start over again, pretend like the first playthrough never happened, and that puts me off. Because if I ever want to play Xenoblade 2, I know I'm likely going to have to delete my old save file again, even though I wish I did more on that initial save file. I know I'm going to have to get rid of it all again just to get another crack at it.
I
can't
nearly
preserve it,
100% in
basically.
Xenoblade 2 on the playthrough that I've currently got, and I'm like, I really want to play through it again, but I'm also like, I'm not getting rid of like 200 hours worth of stuff just to play through it again. I could just make a new account on the Switch, and that's a way around it, but it's like, am I really going to make a brand new account just to have one save file for one game? No.
Yeah, it's just unintuitive, if anything.
Yeah. And if that's a way around it, they should have been able to do that in-game.
Sorry, boys, but I've got dinner. Maybe we can pause for like 45 minutes or wrap it up. Up to you.
Yeah, let's wrap it up then, because I think we've pretty much said everything that we need to say. Let's
Yeah,
just quickly, before we go, let's just say what our rankings for Xenoblade games are that we've played. So we'll start with SBO.
Well, that's easy. Xenoblade 1, I believe it's a masterpiece. I believe the characters were really well developed. I believe the story was really grounded without any fantastical bullshit and was really well timed and everything. And then we have Xenoblade 3, really well executed, but a couple of, stuff left out in the open and just character development that didn't really get used as well as it could have. And then a long distance, and then poor Xenoblade 2 with its critical flaws. I'm really so sorry, but come on, Xenoblade 2.
You're not the only one who feels that way, mate. Yeah, go ahead, Gavin. What's your ranking?
Alright, so Xenoblade 1, it's still a goddamn masterpiece. It is personally my fourth favorite game of all time because, yes, I do have a list. It is still like one of the most perfect games I've ever played. It's just left such a big impact on me. Xenoblade 3 honestly comes very damn close. I'd say it's like a few spots away. It's almost at that same height. But again, a few issues with just a few little nitpicks with the story and whatnot. It almost makes it up to that height. Xenoblade 2 is still a very good game. It still has an amazing world, amazing music, amazing characters, but some critical problems with the gameplay and the battle system. Yeah, it's definitely the weakest of the trilogy, but it's still a very good game. In spite of its flaws.
Do you include Torna and X in that?
Okay, so Torna's definitely better than 2. Well, gameplay and mechanics wise. Xenoblade X, I don't even remember anything about Xenoblade X.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, but I remember liking it enough, but I didn't like the story because it just felt like a means to an end. I didn't like the localization actually. It wasn't bad, but it just wasn't Xenoblade to me.
It had some awful characters in it as well. Like Lin and Tatsu were awful.
Do you remember the Manon in that game?
Yeah.
What, like, why?
Why? Those voices.
Yeah, they just pitched the voices up like all the way up.
It's like playing with Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Jesus.
Also, the fuckers look like Jar Jar Binks, so that's another point against Xenoblade X. Okay,
SP's got to go, so I'll quickly do my ranking. Yeah. 1, very closely followed by 2. And then I'll include Torna with 2. I sort of think of them as the same game. It's just like a side game. So 1, 2 plus Torna, very close. Then 3, a bit behind it, and I can't decide if I like X more than 3. I'll say that I like 3 more for now, and then put X just behind it. So, yeah.
Considering you really were tied up about all the unanswered lore, I can see your ranking. Yeah.
And to be fair, talking to you guys is actually made me appreciate 3 a lot more, and a lot of the things I had with it, I think I could overlook or have been somewhat answered, but there's still a lot there that the game needs to do to get up there with 2 and 1 for me. So.
Yeah. Sometimes seeing other people's point of views makes you appreciate something you didn't see before. Like
That's why I wanted to do this cast, because I knew it would be amazing.
Exactly.
I'm just, I do want to add one little thing. I never expected Xenoblade to actually get this far. If you
Same.
told me back in 2011 when the first game came out, in the midst of Operation Rainfall, if you told me back then that this would actually spawn a franchise, it would eventually become a trilogy, I never would have believed you. I really thought it was going to be a one-off thing.
I have always
Like a
said that.
mistake, doesn't it? Just
Yeah.
something went horribly right.
Yeah,
it really is.
a happy
I
accident.
played one, and like that was like my favorite. That's still my favorite game ever.
How
but-
did you even get introduced to Xenoblade? Was it me? Because I remember
Yeah.
buying it
Yes.
on launch. It was
Yeah.
me, wasn't it?
It was you,
surprised.
Gavin.
Exactly, the both of us. Yes,
Yeah.
it was you.
Yeah, I remember I actually bought it on launch day because I wanted
Mm.
to support Operation Rainfall and I heard the game was good. So I bought it on a whim and it was the best 50 quid I think I ever spent in my life.
Yeah.
And then I told you guys about it and I was like,
Yeah.
you actually might want to play this game, all of you. And you did. You all bought
Yeah.
it because of me. It was
You
me.
were gushing about it, and I
I
was at the
started
time-
it. I
It was
started
you. It was
the
you.
Xenoblade Circle Jerk. I am the architect.
There's no retribution on high though. Just praise.
Yeah. What
I-
a note
I-
to end it on.
The last
Yeah, I know.
joke,
Yeah,
sorry,
great
really
note to end
good,
on.
but,
I was just going to quickly
well.
say that it was you because I was trying to choose between Star Fox 64 3D and Xenoblade Chronicles. So I really wanted a new game for my 3DS, and I took a chance on how much you were praising the game, and yeah, best decision I've ever made. So yeah, that'll be it for this time, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having
see you
us.
soon. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and that'll be it.